and pass it through the eye of the lower looper. Then take the thread and pass it through the back of the machine by sliding it beside the knife, under the foot and out of the back. Next in the sequence of threading is the right overlock needle. Place the thread on the second spool pin, up through the tension mast, down through the upper thread guides and then in between the blue tension discs. Pass the thread along here into the side and then into the third groove of this clip. Continue with the thread over the lower take-up spring into the right side of this clip and then take the thread into the side and along to the right clip and then into the left side here and then through the eye of the right needle. Pass the thread through the eye of the needle, underneath the foot and out the side of the machine. Finally, thread the left overlock needle. Take the thread from the spool pin, up through the thread tension mast, down through the upper threading guides and in between the orange tension springs. Along here, under this clip, into the back threading guide, up into the lower take-up spring, this middle clip, into the middle guide, through here and then through the eye of the left needle. Pass the thread through the back of the machine, underneath the foot and out to the side. Now let's get ready to sew a 4-thread overlocking stitch. 1. Set all of the tension dials to 3, except for this one, which we're not using. 2. Make sure all the threads are under the foot and out of the left side. Set the stitch width dial to 6.5. This dial moves the blade out and away from the needles or towards the needles, changing the width of the stitch, which is called the bite of the stitch. 5. Set the differential dial to N. 6. Place your knife cover guide into position and close the door. 7. Turn on the machine. 8. Lower the presser foot. 9. Place the stitch finger to N. And finally, turn the hand wheel until the needles are in the highest position. Lift the front of the foot, place your fabric underneath, and we're now ready to stitch. Line the edge of your fabric up with the 5/8 stitch guide and then start stitching. This has produced a perfectly balanced stitch. As you can see, the green threads, the upper looper, meet with the red threads, the lower looper, on the cut edge. And then there are 2 rows of stitches, the left needle and the right needle, penetrating the fabric. For a gathered edge, turn all your tension dials to 5. Turn the differential lever to 2. Turn the stitch length dial to 4. As you stitch, allow the fabric to just feed through. And there we have a beautifully gathered edge. Four thread overlocking is suitable for joining 2 pieces of fabric together for seams, but we may want to tidy edges of seams, and if so we need a 3 thread overlocking stitch. For 3 thread overlocking wide, set your tensions to left needle 3, we don't need the right needle, upper looper 3 and lower looper 2. Make sure the differential feed is on normal and the stitch length is normal as well, 2.5 to 3. And then ensure that your right needle has been removed and then stitch. As you can see, the thread tensions are not perfectly balanced. The upper looper, the green, is too tight because it's bringing the lower looper, which is possibly too loose, over the top of the fabric. So we must change our tensions. To loosen our upper looper, the green, we slightly move the dial down. To tighten the lower looper, red, we take the dial up. And now we have a perfectly balanced stitch. For a narrower 3 thread overlocking stitch, use the right needle, blue, and put the tension to 3, upper looper to 3 and lower looper to 3. Stitch differential normal, stitch length normal. Perfect. You can produce a beautiful rolled hem on this overlocker using the right overlocking needle set to 4, upper looper set to 4 and the lower looper set to 6.5. Change the stitch width to as narrow as possible, which is 5.5, and remove the stitch finger to the R for rolled. Set stitch length dial to 1.5 to 2. Hold the chain at the back before you start stitching. A beautiful rolled hem. Occasionally you may want to see your overlocking stitches on top of the fabric. This stitch is called flat locking. To stitch a flat lock, you need to use your left overlocking needle, thread tension set to 0. You do not need your right overlocking needle. Your upper looper needs to be set to 4 and lower looper to 6. Set your differential feed to normal, your stitch width to 6.5, stitch length to 2 to normal, and make sure your stitch finger is working. Place your fabric with your wrong sides together, right sides out. When you have stitched, pull the fabric apart and you'll find that the stitch will lay flat. On the underside you will have a little ladder stitch. One of the most popular stitches used by the professionals is a 5-thread overlocking stitch. And let me show you how you can do it on your machine. To produce a 5-thread overlocking stitch, you will need to have your machine threaded up as follows. The blue tension will be for the right or left overlocking needle, green upper looper, and red lower looper, just as we did before in 3-thread overlocking. But we also need to produce a chain stitch. The orange tension dial will be for the middle chain needle, cover needle, and the brown tension dial will be for the cover looper. And now I will show you how to thread. To thread the chain cover looper, place a thread on the right spool pin, take it up through the tension mask and down through the upper thread tension guides, and then through the brown tension disc. Turn the hand wheel until the chain looper is in this position. Take the chain looper thread from the right side of this clip down into the front of this one, through these two, through this guide, down under this arm, and then through the left clip. Holding the thread straight up, move the threader across with your finger and then thread the either looper. Remember to take the thread through and under the foot. Place a chain needle in the centre cover stitch position. Make sure the needle is up at its highest before securing the screw. Set your tension dials according to your fabric. I've used a light poly cotton, so my cover stitch needle is at tension 4, my overlock needle tension 6, upper looper 6, lower looper 6, and the cover looper is on 8. Before you start stitching,